Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Health Leaders, the place for peer sourced and solution focused insights for healthcare executives. My name is G. Hatfield, and I'm the nursing editor for Health Leaders. Today, we are talking to Cassie Lewis, who is the Chief Nursing Officer for the Bon Secours Richmond market, about her career and her thoughts about trends in the nursing industry. So, hi, Cassie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here, and congratulations on your new role.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. How did you begin your journey into nursing?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of a wild ride and a different trajectory than probably many people in my job today. And so I have been a nurse for almost 25 years and
Mhm.
started out in critical care and emergency medicine, and actually went back and became a nurse practitioner about 17 years ago. And so I am board certified as a critical care nurse practitioner. And then took on a lot of different leadership positions and served as the director of advanced practice at Bon Secours. I served as the chief quality officer for several of our markets, and then started off becoming the chief nursing officer in Hampton Roads a couple of years ago, and then now will be in this job. So while I wasn't a chief nurse at a facility, I've had various leadership kind of careers that have set me up for this and given me a lot of different perspectives that I think I'm really grateful for, because I can usually see the world through the lens of a provider and a nurse. And I
Mhm.
always tell people it blends the best of both worlds, because I can usually relate to both and bring the two together.
Absolutely, yeah, and 25 years is, that's a lot of time under your belt, so you got this.
I
So
try to
who
stay looking young. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. So who've been some of your biggest influences?
I've been very fortunate along my career that once I came to Bon Secours about 13 years ago, I have had just some great mentors and leaders who I've really looked up to over the years, who have guided me professionally and honestly saw things in me that I don't know that I even saw myself.
Mhm.
At the time when I when I actually went back and got my doctorate degree, I focused on nurse executive leadership, and that was about 8 years ago. And the chief executive officer at the time of the market really encouraged me to do things outside of my comfort zone in leadership. And
Mhm.
many of the jobs I've been tapped to do were just that. I've been tapped to do them for leading others and really trying to bring relationships back into nursing, and like I said, blending the role of the provider and the nurse. And so those nursing leaders as well as business leaders have just grown me exponentially and helped me see blind spots where I otherwise wouldn't have seen. Provided great feedback to me, both good and bad, that I could learn from. And I've just been very blessed along my career to have several just really great mentors that I think have just been there to get me into roles that I don't think I ever would have tried otherwise, because I just didn't think they were in my wheelhouse. But come to find out, it's something that I love and I'm passionate about. And that being back in nursing leadership is really kind of the heart of everything for me.
Absolutely, it's always so good to have those people who can kind of, show you that you can do something even if you don't think you can, so that's
Yes,
really
for sure.
cool. Yeah, so what was your best mistake, and what did you learn from it?
I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure all of us can attest to that. I would definitely say one of my biggest mistakes is in leadership. We're faced many times with leading others and sometimes them not being in the right positions and really needing, saying to yourself, are you in the right position? But keeping them around longer than they probably should have been around.
Mm,
And that's not to say that they weren't great leading others, but maybe they were in the wrong position for their leadership skills. And I think early on in my leadership career, it was hard for me to have those really difficult conversations and really try to think outside the box of maybe this is a role that you love, but maybe it's not something that you're going to strive in and really see your best self in. And so, I've had to learn that throughout the years of really having those tough conversations, but saying it in a way that people can not be offended by it, but realize that we're trying to get to their best professional self and grow
mhm,
them professionally. But I've definitely been guilty of keeping some leaders in the wrong positions for a lot longer than I should have, because I thought that they were a great person, or I felt like they needed additional time, and or they had great relationships with their team, and not really looking at the bigger picture and how that impacted, staff that I didn't even think about. And so
mhm.
that's one of the things I think I've grown over the years to do is having those difficult conversations around accountability, but not just saying you're not the right person in general, we're done, how do we grow you into a better person and a better leader in a position that you're going to be successful in? Not everybody is meant for, nursing leadership at the facility level, or doing X, Y, and Z and quality, or something. And so I think trying to find those positions for people where they can be successful is something that I've had to learn over time through having those challenges of leaders in the wrong positions, and keeping them probably around. That's one of the things that comes to mind.
Absolutely, yeah, and I bet that helps foster a really good, like, workforce culture because you know that you're creating pathways for people even if they're
Yeah.
not gonna stay in that position, so
Yeah. It's all
that's
around
great.
messaging.
For sure. So what do you think are the biggest challenges currently facing CNOs in the industry?
Yeah, I think, coming out of the pandemic, I think everybody always probably prefaces that statement with coming out of the pandemic, as we all are, for the last couple of years. But I do think that there is validity that healthcare, the landscape changed a lot during
Mhm,
the pandemic, and how we onboard nurses changed. The caliber of nurses that we are getting changed because they were not able to attend clinicals in our buildings anymore
mhm,
for a period of time. So the educational kind of component of how we train nurses changed in general. And then also just the cultural generational, the generations
mhm,
have changed. And so you're seeing that in a lot of different fields that, I don't think it's unique to healthcare in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the generational gaps and things. And so I think that's a tough place for chief nursing officers to be in right now, is juggling all of those moving parts amidst a workforce that has a lot more options than they've ever had before. And compensation is a lot different than it ever was before.
mhm,
And so you have a shortage of nurses. So you've had workforce challenges, as we lost a lot of nurses in the pandemic to other careers, or, retiring early. And so you have a newer workforce, right? So new graduates, younger workforce that you have to kind of say what may have worked 10 years ago for scheduling is not going to work anymore. We've got to have a
mhm,
work life balance that meets the needs where that, nurse in their lifespan is. And it's different when you're a 24-year-old nurse versus a 40-year-old nurse. And
mhm,
so I think having that perspective is tough. And then you balance that with, during COVID, we had all these agency nurses, and so our compensation, was through the roof to be able to pay for agency and obtain nurses. And so now we're coming out of the pandemic and trying to, all health systems across the country are trying to pull back their labor expenses,
mm,
but we still need these nurses to take care of patients, and balancing the compensation that they were getting during the height of the pandemic when the nursing shortage was critical to what is realistic so we can survive in healthcare. And I think
mhm,
that that's a polarity that we juggle with all the time, is making sure nurses are compensated adequately for the work that they do every day, because we know that that is essential to taking care of our patients, but knowing we also on the business side have to have the ability to have a business that we run to take care of more patients. And so I think that's from a
mhm,
messaging standpoint, the newer generation, it's all about kind of getting into the job, work life balance, compensation, but trying to explain that the why behind, pulling back compensation, or why we can't do this, is really
mhm.
important. And I think some CNOs haven't, gotten to that point yet, because they're trying to still understand what the new healthcare landscape is like, and what, it's shifting all the time. So I think that's a challenge and a polarity that we're facing right now, is the generational gap, as well as the compensation of how do we ensure that we're making sure our nurses are taken care of.
Absolutely. So, what do you think are some of the solutions or strategies for recruiting and retention to address, either the nursing shortage or compensation issues or things like that?
Yeah, I think that you've got to be creative about how we recruit anymore, and
Mhm,
what differentiates you, right, as a health
mhm,
system or as a hospital. And no longer are the days where you can expect just to post a job and have all these people apply to your job, and
mhm,
people waiting at the door. And so we're trying to create programs here at Bon Secours that attract candidates that differentiate us from others. We
mhm,
have a nurse residency program is not unique to Bon Secours, but how do we make it unique to where we can advertise it as doing something a little bit differently for new graduate nurses? We've got a program here where we do an accelerated pathway where we allow nursing new graduates to come in, and over a period of 10 to 12 weeks, they rotate between different units so they can really
hmm,
see what works for them. And we
mhm,
have found that has been highly successful in retaining nurses and getting them into the unit that they feel most supported in and that they feel most at home in. And so, yes, it is something that's financially we're taking, having to take a step back and say, we're willing to, give you 10 weeks of that orientation to see all these different units to say, what
Mhm.
is the right pick for you? And, since we've been doing that and really listening to the workforce, we've just had remarkable success getting people to the right units. And from a retention standpoint, the turnover has decreased. So you're creating that culture that you're really striving to get to take the best care of our patients. And so being that differentiator, I think, is really important right now in
Mhm.
healthcare to recruiting, but also you talked about culture earlier and creating a culture where people really want to come to work and they feel like they're supported at work and trying to make sure that leadership is visible to them, that they
Yeah.
know the why behind the what. All of those things I think are really important to getting the culture that's going to get the nurses to be recruited to you. And again, then compensation doesn't feel so important, that dollar an hour extra when you
Mhm.
have a place that you truly enjoy coming to work and feel supported by your leaders. So I think that's what, for me, it boils down to is creating a culture of nursing where they truly understand their value in their role and truly feel supported by us as leaders.
Absolutely. And kind of to segue about that feeling supported in your workplace piece, what role does diversity, equity, and inclusion play in improving culture and also patient care?
Yeah, I think that's a huge cornerstone of what we've all been really trying to incorporate into our workforce lately. And I
Mhm.
think it's really important for our workforce to represent our communities, right?
Mhm.
So, like, I think that it's not just about tapping into one different school and having one unique workforce that all looks the same, acts the same, and does the same thing. But how do we create a workforce that mirrors our communities that our patients can trust is one of them,
Mhm.
and so I think meeting the needs, and also it goes into supporting your communities, creating jobs for your community, to where you become that hallmark business in that people want to come and work for. And I think that's how you get minorities to get into see doctors and nurse practitioners and things. That's how you get people to trust the healthcare system, where
Mhm.
sometimes trust is really hard to establish. It's when you get your workforce to look like the people that you're serving every single day and ensuring that you have diverse leaders with diverse backgrounds that can understand all of the different dynamics that maybe one mind doesn't, see it this way, but another one has a great perspective that you need to bring to the table that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of. And so I think that the diversity, equity, and just trying to be inclusive of all of the different perspectives will only make us better in healthcare in a field where trust is of the utmost importance, and building those
Mhm.
relationships with each other, but our patients is just mission critical to I think our success and honestly the healthcare and the welfare of our population, as a country right now.
Mhm. Absolutely. Do you think that the generational gap that you were talking about earlier also kind of comes into play there? Maybe
Yeah,
there's a difference in attitude.
yeah, I do. I think that you're seeing some of the generations though where I feel like diversity, equity, inclusion is even more important in the
Mhm.
younger generation. And so they can see us really trying to incorporate that into our everyday life here. And I think that there is
Mhm.
value to them in that, where it, before, again, talking about a differentiator, if they don't see us trying to meet the needs of our communities, creating jobs, creating relationships and trust and things like that, they're not going to want to come to work for us because that's
Mhm.
important to them. And
Yeah.
so I do think generationally, you're seeing a generation where diversity, equity, inclusion is very important, and it's sad that it's gotten to this point, to where it's not that it wasn't valued before, but now
Mhm.
it's really become on the spotlight. And I think what it's done for us in our industry is open up a door where we really need to take a step back and look at, this is the right thing for our patients. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
that's why we're all here, and we've got to make sure we're providing the best care for our patients and providing diverse and equitable care where healthcare is provided. It's a right to all people that live in the United States, is to
Mhm.
make sure that they're taken care of and they're provided a setting where they can feel valued and supported in every stage, quality, section of their life. And so I think that's where the generational gap has really actually helped us, become
Mhm.
better at our jobs.
Absolutely. So to kind of pivot just a little bit, how do you think CNOs can help prevent workplace violence and support nurses after incidents occur?
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's the other thing going back to the pandemic that we have seen is an uptick
Hmm.
in workplace violence. And so
Yeah.
you're seeing that nationally across the board, which is really upsetting just considering, the amount of work our staff, not just nurses, but everybody that works in our healthcare environment, they put in every day. But it's definitely increased. People are
Hmm.
on edge a lot more. People are, the trust, there's economic concerns that people have. And, the list goes on and on. But I think having going back also to culture, right?
Hmm.
So ensuring that if workplace violence is a priority and taking care of your associates during that time, people feel that, that they feel like even if they have some that a workplace violence is so important that we're going to do everything we can to form committees, figure out, talk to our patients why this is happening and is there something that we're missing to prevent workplace violence. But then once workplace violence occurs, which unfortunately we know it will, is how do we support our associates who are victims of workplace violence? And that's not
Hmm.
just physical, but emotional, right? Like, so I think workplace violence, people attribute it to patients angry and, physical violence. But in reality, that the verbal component of workplace violence is very, very important. And so ensuring that, it's not acceptable to speak like that to somebody. It's not acceptable to threaten somebody.
Hmm.
And putting your foot down that's your culture. It's not acceptable. But then when it does happen, letting your associates know that we're here for you, we're taking care of you. And that's how when we have issues, unfortunately, that occur here is even though I'm a regional chief nursing officer, reaching out to the associate at the facility and just saying, I'm here. I heard about this incident. I'm so sorry it happened to you, but I want you to know I heard about it and you're being thought of. And if there's anything we can do, please let me know. Those conversations go a long way to an associate that doesn't even think that you care about them necessarily, is
Hmm.
taking 2 minutes of your day and sending them an email or a call, just saying, I'm just checking on you. And I think that's where CNOs can really make a difference is if it does happen, be personal about it, have those relationships because people will feel that sense of empathy and sympathy and compassion, which is what we're known for in nursing. And I think what we need to get back to that is having more compassion for each other, not just, the
Hmm.
patients, but each other as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and it plays into that that culture piece, and also I'm sure it helps with retention too, to know that
Yeah.
your executives care. Um,
Yep. For sure.
yeah. So, what new technologies do you foresee changing the landscape of nursing?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of different things come out I think some things are working and some things have some development still to do.
Hmm.
We have a lot of things around virtual nursing going on, where we have nurses behind, cameras in different rooms where we have virtual care companions or people that, are monitoring for falls and speaking over the camera and saying, Mrs. Smith, sit back down, we'll be right with you. So we've
Hmm.
got, virtual care companions for things like fall prevention, but then we also are trying and piloting virtual nurses who are doing admission,
Hmm.
assessments and
Hmm.
discharge teaching. And that's where I really foresee some value in the virtual component of having expert nurses who maybe can't physically practice at the bedside
Hmm.
or are unable to practice, being that really expert nurse that can go over the discharge instructions with the patient and make it more meaningful. So we are piloting a lot of virtual nursing right now and ways that we can make it work. We're doing a lot of things around telehealth and nursing support around telehealth, like
Hmm.
telepsych consults, and we're doing some different telehealth forensic violence actually consultations right now and supporting each other for forensic violence
Hmm.
consultations. So I definitely foresee it growing and growing and us needing to try it and see is this going to work for us or is it
Hmm.
not, because sometimes they sound really good but they're not, they're really hard to implement or you're not really seeing the value of them. And nothing is more valuable than a nurse building a relationship with a patient that they can truly, empathize and take care of. And so I always am reticent to say virtual nursing can ever replace the role of how important a nurse is to our patients, but I think that there are places for it. And I see us as an organization where we're on the, definitely trying to be on the front end of that and be
Hmm.
progressive and trying to figure out what is the newest technology that we can do to be more efficient and agile in our work, like documentation and things like that. So it's always about trial and error, and there's a lot of great things that we keep and a lot of things that we say this isn't going to work for us, but AI is another one that you're seeing some different
Yes, yeah.
technology that's sparking is around AI and how that incorporates into the care that we provide. So it's exciting times for all that, what to look at where healthcare is going to be even in 5 years,
Mhm.
compared to what it was 5 years ago, and seeing in just this short amount of time, it's going to skyrocket into some other, technology that we probably haven't even thought of yet.
Absolutely. And I'm hearing, all of this from all of the CNOs that I've spoken to genuinely, especially with the virtual nursing.
Yep.
It's becoming so widespread. And I'm wondering, since you said that y'all have virtual nursing companions and things like that, what's been the patient reaction to that?
Yeah, it's been mixed, to be honest, and that's something I think it's really important to message to the patients.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the generational gap, that's not just in the workforce, that's also in the
Yes,
patients.
yeah.
And so
Hmm.
younger generations tend to be a lot more receptive to the virtual component and the different types of technology around discharge planning and admissions and things that we do in the hospital.
Hmm.
Whereas some of our older generation are not used to that type of, having a camera in their room all the time and
Hmm.
talking to a camera, having to use a device, an iPad to communicate with dietary, to be able to get the food that they want. And so messaging, I think, is of the utmost importance to say, this is how we're going to best take care of you and provide an additional resource. But if you're really uncomfortable with this or this is not for you, we want to know that and we want to make sure that
Hmm.
we tailor our care to you. So I think having some level of flexibility is really important because that it's not for everybody. And but it has a place in healthcare and balancing that and messaging it to our patients about the why, and our staff too, why we're doing this. It's not to replace you as a nurse. It's to
Hmm.
help you become more efficient to do the things in nursing that you love to do and probably why you got into the profession to begin with. To free you up to have those conversations with patients. And so I think being very intentional about how you message virtual nursing and to patients and workforce is, I think that's how you make it successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely more of a tool than a replacing thing for
Right.
sure.
Right.
Um, yeah, so to pivot back to you personally, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, so outside of my family, who I'm very proud of, I've got a
Mhm.
13-year-old daughter who's a competitive swimmer. And so we're at the pool. If I'm not at work, I'm at a pool pretty much
Yeah.
every hour of the day. But I think when you look at, they have been my biggest cheerleaders over the years and have been very, very supportive of my career and not being home all the time and having just
Mhm.
to work long hours. But I think that they see that I'm passionate about improving the care of patients, and I'm passionate about driving our workforce to really feel valued, and that culture is very important to me. And so, honestly, getting this position recently as the chief nursing officer of Richmond, it allows me the ability to continue to grow and expand that vision of providing a culture that people are just so proud of. And I
Mhm.
think if getting to this point from being where a nurse practitioner where I was seeing patients every day and doing things at a very different level to now being a chief nurse at of a large market, you know as a professional journey for me, this has been a really really crazy ride, but really great ride. And I feel like I'm finally at a place where I'm just really excited to dig in and meet everybody and learn about the culture that we're going into, and really trying to make a difference now to all of our staff and the patients. And that's kind of what I would say I'm probably most proud of, is getting to this point and having a family that supports me, to get to this point.
Yeah.
It's for me kind of the winning of every day.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so great when you have people behind you again, kind of like what
Yeah.
we were talking about earlier with influences. But yeah, that's great. So do you have any advice for CNOs?
I think if I could offer one piece of advice, it would be to take care of yourself. If
Hmm.
you can't take care of others, if you're not taking care of yourself, and being intentional with how you plan your day. We
Hmm.
tend to get so many meetings on our books and so many different priorities and things that we have to deal with. If we're not very intentional about making time on our calendars to go talk to our associates, putting time on your calendar just for you to be able to catch up on work and email,
Hmm.
because we go to meetings all day. So just be intentional. Like, at the end of the day, you own your calendar. And so you have that ability to say no to things or to delegate to others. And that's one of the most common things I see is people saying yes to everything and them
Mhm.
not being able to get anything done or things not getting the outcomes, but they're not taking time to get those outcomes. And so, really having that intention, I think to me is probably the biggest piece of advice that I was given that has been helped me be successful that I would give to others to so they don't feel like they're constantly on the hamster wheel of life trying to survive, but actually trying to be proactive and really engaging their staff.
Absolutely, I think that's great advice for everybody, honestly.
It's something
Yeah,
I live by. I have to say no to things sometimes, or else I'm going to be in a world
absolutely.
of hurt.
Yeah, we'll all get burnt out if we never say no.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Cassie, for your time. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to get to know you and hear your
Yeah.
insights, and thank you to our audience for listening.